everyone, welcome to today's episode of Wake the Future. Today we are going to be talking about play, and it feels very appropriate because we were just in our kitchen talking about play as our son is outside. The sun is shining, he's outside getting dirty with the neighbor kids, and we're like, oh, this is so nice that he's actually just been outside for hours. Oh wait, we should do a whole episode about it. So we just put the camera on ourselves and we're like, let's dig into why play is so important.
Yeah, and we talk about play all the time. I think of all the topics we cover here at Wake the Future, and we talk a lot about AI and all of the things that sort of really matter to the future. I think play is one of these simple concepts that just, it resonates with us. Like, it's so important for children, it's so important for adults. The seasons are changing. We live in a place where we have long winters. So the fact that it's nice out today, it is a weekend. We do most of our filming during the week while our son is not here. But we were like, today, let's do an episode. We feel good.
Have we lost the ability to play?
Yeah.
And let's start with kids first, right? We know so many kids who are addicted to screens. They're inside. Yes, they might be outside with organized sports, right? Like our son is starting Little League season, and that has fully taken over like the full gestalt of our town. But it's like, have we lost our sense of unfettered play, free play, nature-based play, the kind of play where it's like a stick turns into a sword and you just imagine and come in when it gets dark outside?
It's very easy for people of different generations to wax poetic about how things were during their youth.
Yeah.
And there's always an element of nostalgia. And look, the way that things were when you and I were kids, not going to be exactly the way that things are now for our son. But it doesn't change the fact that I think there are certain principles that will always hold true. And as we've gone through a technological and digital revolution, I think there have been a lot of side effects, some good, many not so good. I think about it this way, and I think you're with me on this, but I view fundamental play, certainly among children, to fall into 5 categories that I think we have to talk about for a few minutes each, and we have to work to retain. It's analog play, meaning non-digital, off of screens. It is outdoor play. So whatever that means. Not everyone lives in a place where they have access to nature. Some people live in the middle of a city. I spent most of my life in the middle of an urban jungle.
Yeah.
But wherever you are, it's getting outside of your home, of your structure, of the office. Third is what I would call unstructured play, where, you know, there are no predetermined outcomes, but everything is sort of left up to kind of chance and imagination. That correlates to the fourth, which to me is creative play. It's all about using your imagination, your creative muscle, developing innovative capacity. And then the fifth, linked to unstructured as well, but I think is really important, is independent play. It's play where the terms are not dictated to you by anyone else, including your parents. Or any authority figures, but you have the room in the sandbox to kind of do what you want. So I think we should cover each of those.
Well, if you remember, in one of the last chapters of AI and the New Human Frontier, I had a whole chapter on the lost art of boredom.
Yeah.
And the whole point of, have we lost the ability to be bored?
Oh, yeah.
And the sparks of creativity. And you said, like, you kind of hit the buzzer on the word that I think is most important here, which is imagination. And you know, it's like we almost try to coach kids out of the daydreaming ability and like the things that happen in just like mind wandering or doodling. And the mind can then take you to amazing places that are then sparks of creativity, sparks of imagination. But without all of these kind of 5 very critical pillars that you talk about, then it's like they're stuck.
Let's reverse engineer this. So I listed 5 things out, but we don't have to cover them in that sequence. So let's start with what I'll call unstructured play.
Yeah.
Because I think to a certain extent that gets at the heart of what you're talking about. Boredom is the whole idea that you don't have something lined up in front of you to do every second of every single day. One of the big problems that is well publicized with our educational system here in the US and in a lot of other places is the fact that you still have this educational system that is designed and engineered for an industrial era. And unfortunately, what happens now is that when children are put in front of digital technologies all the time that change their wiring and their attention span, if they are left for 1 or 2 minutes without a specific task to do or something in front of them, they get bored, and then we diagnose the child as having an attentional problem. So there's a chicken or egg issue here, because the fact is a lot of these kids are just responding to the environments we've put in front of them.
Well, and parents want to keep filling the time.
Right.
So it's like, I'm bored. Okay, here's a list of things that you could do. It's almost like we've lost the ability to say, figure it out.
Right.
And in the figure it out comes independence, comes tinkering, experimentation, all of those building blocks of learning that go so far beyond just what you're reading in a book or what you're like learning through rote memorization. The ability to just wonder. And we talk about the different muscles that we have to flex. And in so many different episodes, we've talked about what it means to flex the thinking muscle. But here it's like, what does it mean to really strength train and flex the curiosity muscle?
Oh, yeah.
Throughout the age spectrum. And you know, and I say this in so many presentations, it's the George Bernard Shaw quote, which is my favorite quote. It actually also starts the movie Tag, which is also a great movie. But it's, you don't stop playing because you grow old because you stop playing.
Yeah.
And a lot of these core facets of play that you outline are those building blocks that if we don't have that when we're kids, how are we expected to have that when we're adults?
Neither you nor I like to BS about any of this stuff, so let's just cut to the chase. The through line with a lot of the topics that we cover is retaining our humanity in a digital age, retaining our humanity in an era of AI. And so to the extent that we want to retain our humanity by playing, by strengthening that curiosity muscle, as you call it, which is brilliant, that is going to not only prevent us from growing old, kind of cognitively and physically, but it's just going to keep us, I think, better aligned from a mental health perspective, and just holistically with where the world is going and what we need to do to optimize ourselves and to optimize our kids. So the other day, we were watching the Brady Bunch. Now, we're very nostalgic. We love these old shows. Very, very cheesy, right?
Oh, but it was one of the singing episodes, and those are the best.
Great. It's great stuff. But like the Brady Bunch even predates us a little bit. Like that was on TV before either one of us were born.
Predates us by a lot.
Not by that much. I mean,
And
Brady
by
Bunch
enough.
ended in 1974. I was born in 1979.
Okay,
No, we're old. We're getting old. Understand that. Sorry. I'm going to have to out you on that one.
Another shout out to my dad. We're getting older.
We're getting older. And he is older than we are. So we're watching the Brady Bunch, and I said to Erica that, isn't this great? A simpler time. Look at these kids. I mean, you're watching Greg, who was like 15, the oldest son, and he's in his room with his brothers, and all they have is a bunk bed, a lamp, a basketball, and like a pad. And I'm like, they sat around writing music and collecting stamps and talking to each other and being creative. And now we have so many different gadgets, digital and otherwise, that fill our kids' time so that they don't even have 5 seconds to sit there and figure out, okay, what am I going to do now to busy myself? So I do think if we go back to this paradigm, I think number one, unstructured play, the fact that there are no predefined parameters, the fact that we basically allow a child, okay, boredom is okay. You have to learn to manage it. Because when you get into the real world, there might be boredom. There might be boredom with tasks at work. You have to learn how to overcome that and not let it defeat you in a given moment. So having unstructured play for 5 minutes, for an hour, I think is so beneficial to children because it means that they have to figure it out themselves. We're not placating them with pacifiers, many of which are now digital, the way we pacify or placate toddlers.
I think a lot of this also, like the underpinnings are neurological.
Yeah.
So we've talked in a prior episode about how vulnerability is one of our superpowers. Yeah. And I would say an extension of this is that neuroplasticity is one of our superpowers. And we know the effect that play has on the brain. And we know that young brains are very malleable.
Yeah.
And they're malleable for better or for worse. So they're malleable in that they can be rewired very quickly and very easily through the use of a whole cadre of digital tools.
Yeah.
At the same time, they can be rewired for the better. And then longitudinally, a lot of those effects then go through adolescence, post-adolescence, early adulthood, and you continue on. And I've long said, and I know this is not a conversation around AI, but in a time of AI, our own neuroplasticity and our ability to change our wiring is going to be such a superpower. And I think a lot of that is rooted in the fundamental aspects of play that you've outlined.
Well, I think one of the things that's so important is as we go through our lives, there are ways for us to actually change our physiology, change the structure of our brain. I think about this as 3 different stage gates time-wise in someone's life. I think we have to think about the first 3 years of life as basically the foundation of the house. Mm-hmm. We know through research, and please don't quote me on the exact specifics of this. Some nerd is going to see this that's a neuroscientist and be like, it's actually at 4.5 years. But I think Correct me if I'm
Is
wrong.
that how neuroscientists
That
speak?
roughly, yes. And, yeah. I think that roughly, look, I took a lot of neuroscience classes way back in the day, so I'm kind of taking a pot shot at myself here. I think that the first 3 years of life is what they've determined as being really the most important stage gate for those, that foundational piece of what you're going to be cognitively for the rest of your life. That most of those neural connections and a lot of that plasticity starts to solidify at 3. Then there's another stage gate, which takes you, I think, roughly to about 18, which is through adolescence. And it's the fact that there is still a lot of plasticity and ability to change, at least around the margins, until you basically become an adult. And then, and I view that as like the first floor of the house. And then the second floor of the house, or the attic, is something that in theory, furniture can get moved around and things can be shifted pretty much for the rest of your life. So the foundation is solid. The first floor is there. There's only so much wiggle room, but you can still form new connections and you can challenge yourself and you can play and you can change your wiring up until you die. And so I view it as 3 different stage gates. And at the end of this episode today, after we're done talking about how this impacts children, I think it's important for us to bring this back to how this impacts everyone watching this, even if you don't have kids, because this matters to adults. So we talked about number 1, which was unstructured play. Number 2 to me is the most fundamental to where we are right now as a society, and that is analog play over digital play. And I really do believe this. And listen, I understand that I'm going to sound like I'm on a soapbox with some of this. And I also don't want to shame people outright as parents because they've made decisions that may not align with what we're saying. But you know what? If some people watching this do feel shamed, I think that's okay, because I think we have to have a reckoning collectively, like a collective conscience kind of moment about what are we doing to our kids. So this one to me is very simple. The more time we put kids on screens at an early age, the more harm we are potentially doing to them long term. I firmly believe this, that in 1 or 2 generations, as more data comes in and as we refine our behaviors, they're going to look back on this period of time and they're going to say that people who gave their kids phones at 7, 8, 9, 10 years old for things other than basic security, like calling mom and dad and letting them know where you are, or putting them on social media at 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, when they definitely do not need to be there, just because of peer pressure, is going to be considered a form of abuse or neglect. And that sounds extreme, but I firmly believe that.
Well, we're starting to see more countries reverse course. I mean, the question is, it's like, can you put the toothpaste back in the tube?
Right.
You know, it's everything that Jonathan Haidt has been talking about for years, like with the anxious generation and, you know, limiting screen time and cell phones and all of this. It's also the counter trend that I think is starting to really come up. There's a wait list for the tin can phone, where a lot of these parents are like, no, I don't want my kid to have their own cell phone. Like, that's ludicrous. But also, like, they need to step up, talk about independence. Like, they need to plan their own, like, hang sessions, because both of us hate the word play date.
It's very hard for me. I mean, I don't want to interrupt, but it's very difficult for me as the father of a boy, who is
call
very
it a
much a
play
boy,
date.
to
I know,
talk about
it's-
hanging out with his buddies. And it's like, Dad, can I have a play date? I mean, if I had called it that when I was a kid, I would have felt like a schmuck. So I just...
Yeah, we're trying to bring back hang sesh. I don't know if that's like going
Just
to...
chill out time. Let's hang out. Let's get together.
Yeah.
You know, let's whatever.
But it's trying to give these kids the independence to call a friend or be able to call their grandparents.
Yes.
So I think we're seeing some of the, like, these counter movements rising up alongside of it.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because a lot of parents are like, oh my God, like, if I could talk to my past self 8 years ago, I never would have given my child an iPad or a phone, or I would have delayed it. And we've long talked about the fact that we'll see what happens with Gen Alpha, but especially with Gen Z, a lot of it, it's like the generation in the Petri dish. Like, there's no historical precedent here.
Zero.
There's no, like, generational precedent. We have absolutely no effing idea longitudinally and neurologically, right, how any of this ultimately is going to play out.
This is why I say that in 1 or 2 generations, they're going to look back and be like, what were these parents thinking? And we're living through it now, and we have an opportunity to course correct in real time. We just have to wake up. We have to wake the F up, wake the future. And I look at this and I'm like, I see that parents give into pressure, because a child might be like, well, 80% of my friends have a phone. Like, why don't I? Or they're on social media. Why? And I get it. And you don't want your kid to be ostracized. And there might be situations where that happens. I'm not trying to be prescriptive here, other than to say you have a choice in front of you. If you were told that choice A is to not fight the battle now so you can make your life easier at this moment, but then deal with all of the repercussions that are going to be long-term down the road, Or fight the battle now, deal with the inconvenience, have your kids slam their door in your face, and deal with what comes after that. And then
But
know
it's
that later
parental
on,
agency.
they're going to have the autonomy to live their life as adults and be as digital or analog as they want anyway in a changing world. Use your parental agency to dictate some of these terms. I don't understand when the inmates started running the asylum. And listen, you and I probably make a lot of mistakes as parents. I'm never going to sit on here and be like, we're the best parents. I think we're pretty good. But I'm sure we make mistakes. But in this area, we are steadfast. And we're going to remain steadfast. And you know what? If we have struggles with our son because of it, so be it. That's life. I mean, you make the commitment when you bring children into this world to do your best to raise them the right way. So I do believe that analog play, three-dimensional play, tactile play is going to matter so much. Not necessarily as a complete replacement. I'm not sitting here arguing for kids to basically go back in evolution, but as a companion to digital play. So at the very least, a child has a more balanced ecosystem. They're not just always on a screen.
So let's then bring that through.
Yes.
And then talk about adults. Because I go back, again, to my favorite quote. It's like, we don't stop playing because we grow old because we stop playing. And this is a drum that I have been banging in a lot of companies. And as I stand on stage, because to bring the AI conversation into it for a moment, one of the ways that we are going to get that piece of it right is by giving people in workplaces the ability to play, experiment, and culturally tell them, right? You're not going to mess it up. People are so afraid. And it's one of the reasons why women are slower to adopt these tools, because there is a massive confidence gap. There's a lot of fear around it. And I don't remember the exact statistic, but it is like at least 10 to 15%. The gulf between male and female users, which is enormous. And that is at all levels of the organization. It's all the way from the female CEO to the female admin, all across the board. And yet we're being told, oh, there's just an expectation that you're going to use these tools. And people are nervous and they need to be told. It's like going back to the play that they learned when they were kids and applying that in the workplace. Otherwise, we're going to, if we want to talk about a symbiosis or a coevolution with us in technology, if we are not given the permission to play, then it's no wonder we're deferring more of our thinking. It's no wonder we're like, oh, I don't really know if that's my thought or its thought. Like everything is so jumbled up.
Right.
Because we have to approach it through the same lens that we approached problem solving when we were children.
Well, and that's the thing. These fundamental principles don't change throughout our life.
But they're almost coached out of us.
That's exactly what happens. One of the biggest problems with modern society, and this is a very American phenomenon because of how capitalist driven we are, is that once you are an adult, playtime is over. That unstructured, unfettered creativity, that playful, childlike energy, it's like you feel like you're going to be judged as an adult if you showcase those characteristics. And we're told that, nope, you're a grown-up now. You got to behave. You got to grow up. There is a very big difference between growing up and assuming adult responsibilities and then applying that to the way your entire mind operates and then no longer having fun and having whimsy in your life.
Well, our son was just watching Big. He's been obsessed with
Loves
watching
it.
Big recently.
Yeah, and I mean, and the whole point of Big, for anyone out there who's never seen the movie Big, 1988, I saw that in the theater when I was 9 years old. And that movie wouldn't get made today. It'd be canceled because he became an adult, but because he was still technically a child and had a relationship with a grown woman, like, canceled, look out, most harmless movie ever. And the moral of the story is we grow up.
We all need to go to FAO Schwartz and play the piano.
No, and you know, here's the sad thing about this is we all know people in our lives that are adults that are kind of like Peter Pans. Many of them don't have children. Many of them choose a different path. And you look at them objectively and you're like, you know what? Part of me envies their life because they're just living life on their terms. But we've still been coached to almost ridicule these people and act like they're not playing along society's rules. So the fact is, this idea of playfulness, it matters to us as humans, as adults in our lives. It's going to matter to us in work.
Where we get this whole notion wrong is by creating play in such a, like, adult play in structured, almost gimmicky ways. This is where so many workplaces have gotten it wrong, where it's like, oh, we'll put in like a tiki bar and like a slide and pool tables and like that's entertainment. Like entertainment and play are two very different
But
things.
it also can be play, but it is not unstructured play, and it's not truly creative play. You put in a tiki bar, or even just like a kitchen area with a little bar in companies. The research has already shown that most people don't even take advantage of it because they don't want to be judged by their bosses or their peers. And then the idea that you put a pool table in the middle of an office that most people are never using. They're not using those pool tables. They're not using those slides. They become gimmicks. What ends up happening is it's sort of a nod to corporate culture. It's like, here, we're putting fun things in for our people.
Yeah.
But it's canned. It's totally canned. So I want to go back to the structure of this as I think about it in my head. You just kind of led us to a point which is really interesting, because when you connected the dots with adulthood and with how this sort of escapes us, we connect that line between how do we optimize this and do this the right way with our children, and then whether we have children or not, how do we live this as adults? We talked about analog versus digital play. We talked about unstructured versus structured play. The third is another basic one, which is as you have the capacity to do so, get outside of the built environment. Get outside of your home, your apartment, your office. Get some fresh air. Feel the pulse, the energy. If you're in, live in an urban jungle and are a city dweller. If you live near the woods, or you live near a lake, or you live near a mountain, get outside, hike, breathe the fresh air in, listen to the animals. It sounds ridiculously cliche, but getting outside and connecting with nature, even in the smallest way.
It's why in Japan they were forest bathing. There are a lot of like urban renewal projects around a sense of play.
Yeah.
But again, it's to your point, it's these different types of play. There is designing around play-based experiences. Yeah. And then there's the mindset. And it's a playful mindset. It's giving yourself the permission that this is okay. And I think that's such a core part of, again, flexing that curiosity muscle, where it's like, oh, what would it look like if? We always talk about the fact that the future will require us to ask the questions that matter.
Yeah.
And if we are to ask those questions, and open-ended questions that invite exploration, what are those at the heart of it? That's curiosity. To approach that and to keep strength training that muscle to think, okay, what if I even played around with this answer? What if I played around with this scenario? What if I played around with this technology? Yeah. What if I played around with this mindset shift? What if I even adopted a different behavior that might suit me for the future? Let me try that on, play around with it for a little bit. That I think a lot of this is just kind of getting out of our own way and really adhering to the mindset part of this, because as adults, we kind of turn that off.
Time is real estate, and we need to reclaim that time for ourselves. We need to reclaim that time for our children. One of the driving forces behind you and I leaving New York City several years ago, when our son was 3, was we lived in an area during the pandemic where there were parents that were made so paranoid about what was going on during that time that they wouldn't let their children leave, let alone the building. They wouldn't let them leave their apartment for a 3 to 6 month period. That is so detrimental to a child. It was so important for us to get our son outside and let him know that we are not going to proactively institutionalize you. And that institutionalizing can happen literally and it can happen figuratively. We can put ourselves in a little box and keep ourselves inside, and we can also kind of put these constraints around what we're doing. It was very important for us then to get him outside so that he could have healthy developmental milestones. And it's just as important now that he's 8 years old, and it's always going to be that way, I suspect. So the idea of analog play, the idea of outdoor play, the idea of unstructured play, you're talking a lot about creative play. And when I say creative play, I'm talking about the idea that we give ourselves time to generate new things, not through large language models and generative AI, but write, do art, build, generate something new that is not based on any specific inputs or set of instructions.
Yeah, we actually don't even think of daydreaming as a skill. Sometimes the genesis of something so powerful is through those playful mind games that just happen even on a subconscious level, where you're like, oh, I thought of this, and this made me think of this. And then you started here, and you're all the way over there. And when you land here, you're like, how did I get there? But wow, Like, that was really interesting because you just gave yourself that permission again to let your mind wander and play.
Well, some of the people that we think of throughout modern history as some of the smartest people out there, the most successful entrepreneurs, company builders, a lot of these people were not the most successful in a sort of contained school environment, an academic environment, because their attention wandered. They were daydreamers. And that's penalized in our school system, but a lot of those people ended up becoming some of the most successful people we know. The reason we know this is because when they do their autobiographical kind of memoirs and stuff, you hear about these things, like guys like Steve Jobs. And what's interesting about that is now we're in even more of what I would say an accelerated version of that, which is there are increasingly people questioning the ROI of sending all kids, let's say, to college and in favor of doing vocational education or whatever. But what if some of the people who really need to daydream the most and are being totally constrained in our educational system and are being told they have attentional issues are the ones who are least destined to ever go to college, but when they're done with school, they're going to go right out and start a business because they are daydreamers, and we're penalizing that instead of rewarding it. We have to reward it. We have to reward it in kids, we have to reward it in adults, and the ability to just write and to conceive and to draw and paint and all of that stuff and to build. I think that one of the best analogs for this whole concept is Lego. There are two distinct ways you can engage with Lego, and that's what's fascinating to me. Number one, you can get a Lego set or a kit, and they've gotten increasingly sophisticated over the years, and now they cost hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars, and you have to follow specific instructions to get to an end goal. What's cool about that is that it forces kids to learn how to pay attention, follow through on a goal, attention to detail, work collaboratively with friends or parents.
Understand instructions.
Then there's the flip side, which is just taking Lego blocks and just telling a kid build. Our son happens to like the latter.
That's what it was at the beginning.
Yes, and our son happens to like the latter. We haven't specifically told him, you must do this or that. He doesn't particularly show interest in the sets like a lot of our friends' kids do. It's not better or worse. It's both. He likes to take Legos and just make cities out of them. And to me, that is one of the ultimate expressions of his creativity. That is creative and that is unstructured play. And I love that. And then the fifth category, which I think can't be stressed enough, is independent play, which basically means that in the case of a child, their mom and dad or their teacher or other authority figures are not dominating all the parameters around play, but you basically give the child their own agency. We talk a lot about agency, and as adults, to not play just according to when it's okay, based on our work schedules or what our boss says is okay, or the stupid gimmicky thing that the CEO puts in the workspace, but that we reclaim our agency and we play according to our own guidelines. So it's about the curiosity muscle, it's about the agency muscle.
And the through line here to some of the technological parts of this is that people think that they are playing almost like a game of ping pong with AI.
Yeah.
It's like bouncing ideas off of AI. And this plays into our concept of cognitive sovereignty so much because as you are playing with ideas, wrestling with ideas, all of the things you talked about with creation and creativity and writing and ideation and imagination, right? This happens through flexing your thinking muscle alongside that curiosity muscle. Keep both of those intact because it's very easy to like let both of them atrophy and then defer a lot of that quote unquote thinking or imagination to AI.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with all of that. And I think that's a nice segue into kind of wrapping up here, which is to say that I think you and I both agree that play, the concept of play, as something that seems so squishy and big and nebulous, is one of the most important things we could ever talk about. As parents, and as we reflect on our own identities as adults, as business partners, as husband and wife, and individually, the idea of play is something that has to stay with us on a lifelong basis. It's fundamental to children in their development. It is still fundamental to us as adults. I think about this as 3 stage gates, the first 3 years of life, which are the most critical to the foundation of the house neurologically, then through the rest of childhood and adolescence, which is that second stage gate, and then what we do for the rest of our lives. If we forfeit the ability to play, I think we forfeit some of our humanity, some of our sovereignty. And this is all about that curiosity muscle. It's all about that agency muscle. And it's all about reclaiming and retaining what it is to make us human. And when I think about play, I think about analog play, I think about creative play, I think about unstructured play, I think about outdoor play, and I think about independent play.
Stay strong, stay sovereign, stay human, and remember to follow Wake the Future for more.